Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, with a presentation that will point the finger of responsibility, if not blame, for World War I at France and Britain, and then take a look at Serbia's role too. It's no exaggeration to say that France had been traumatised by its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War in 1870. France was obsessed with the strength of Germany, reflected in its military might and its economic might, and in its population growth as France's stagnated. Isolated in 1870, France knew it needed allies, and when Germany failed to renew the reinsurance treaty with Russia, France allied with Russia, the two countries promising to support each other should either of them be attacked by Germany. It thereby committed Germany to dealing with the possibility of a war on two fronts. But let's be clear, much though the French government and politicians in general could not publicly give up on Alsace and Lorraine, as far as their foreign policy was concerned, they were realistic. They were determined to maintain their status as an imperial power, but they were not actively seeking war with Germany. France was also deeply divided. Between 1871 and the outset of war, there were 50 different governments, though repeatedly led by the same names. Then there was the Dreyfus affair, the trial of Dreyfus in 1894. France was bitterly divided by it, and the army was particularly damaged. Britain's foreign policy was based on two basic conditions: a balance of power amongst the countries of mainland Europe and the independence of the Low Countries, that's Holland and Belgium, lest their occupation by a major power threaten Britain's shores. If these conditions applied, Britain, with its undisputed naval power, could afford to adopt its policy of splendid isolation, though acting as guarantor to that balance of power, standing opposed to any country that threatened to upset it. What's more, Britain, with its empire, was more likely to clash with France and increasingly Russia, at least until the naval race and the two Moroccan crises brought Germany sharply into focus. So, when we come to the July crisis, we can say that France had added to the general raising of tension with its alliance with Russia. It clearly wanted that to be a strong alliance, and it promised to stand by Russia. Indeed, France had given its own blank cheque to St. Petersburg, when Poincaré is said to have promised that if Russia goes to war, no matter the circumstances, then France too would go to war. This must have given Russia more confidence in standing in support of Serbia. France didn't seem to do an awful lot to prevent a war either. It didn't do a lot to dissuade Russia, and neither did it give particular support to British attempts to resolve the problem peacefully. So there is certainly French responsibility to consider. And when we come to Britain, it also added to the raising of tension in the manner in which it responded to a perceived German threat with regard to the naval race and in the Moroccan crises. This does not link it directly to the events of July-August 1914. It was slow to respond during the crisis, and Britain was criticised, both at the time and since, for not making it clear to Germany that it would support France and Russia. If it had done so, the argument goes, then Germany might have been encouraged to pressure Austria-Hungary to respond more reasonably. However, Britain apart from any traditional reluctance to get involved in European affairs, was also concerned that threatening Germany might, at the same time, encourage France and Russia. But this is as far as British responsibility goes, and Britain did try to broker a solution. Finally, let's consider Serbia's role in all of this. Now clearly Serbia was not one of the great powers, but I want to squeeze a few words about Serbia, as it was to have a profound bearing on events. Serbia had its own ambitions. A greater Serbia to include Bosnia-Herzegovina and Albania, and so a coastline and ports, and to be rid of Austro-Hungarian influence in the Balkans. And let's be clear, there were those in Serbia, including in its government and its diplomatic corps, who were prepared to risk the fate of Russia, its great supporter, and to risk European war for the Serbian cause. This showed itself in the Bosnian crisis, in the Balkan wars, in the activities of its terrorist groups. Some, the British ambassador in Belgrade, for example, believed that Serbia was under the control of Russia and simply did Russia's bidding. But nothing could be further from the truth. The Serb Prime Minister, Nikola Pasic, sought to avoid conflict with Austria-Hungary and had pensioned off the more belligerent army officers. But he still struggled to control the nationalists. The relationships between the Black Hand, the Serbian monarchy, the Serbian government and the army were extremely complex. But there was a clear and strong ambition to unite all southern Slavs in a greater Serbia. And this was evident across Serbian society. And the government didn't clamp down enough on the subversive activities of nationalist groups. But it could hardly be held responsible, not directly responsible, for the assassination. And accepting Austria-Hungary's ultimatum in its totality would have been a humiliating breach of its sovereignty. Still, it also knew that any thorough investigation would have led to Dragutin Dimitrovic, the founder of Black Hand and a colonel in the Serbian army. So, as always, I hope that was useful for you. Let me remind you that there's my website too, and that I am available for tutorials if you're interested in that. Just get your parents to contact me at historymadeeasier@gmail.com and we'll see if we can work something out. But for now, let me thank you for listening and wish you the very best of luck in your studies. Cheers.